The galaxy's strongest warriors fell silent as they watched humans. Train, the observation deck of the Galactic Combat Academy hung suspended above the training grounds, its transparent floor offering an unobstructed view of the arena below. Commander Vexthor of the Crinian Empire stood with his 4 arms crossed, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the artificial lights. Around him, representatives from 12 different warrior species had gathered, each considered among the deadliest fighters in known space. They had come to witness something unusual, humans at training. "This should be entertaining," rumbled General Thurak, his massive reptilian frame casting a shadow across half the deck. The Saurian had conquered 47 worlds through sheer physical dominance. "I've heard these mammals talk endlessly about their combat prowess, but they lack our natural weapons, our armored hides, our venom sacs." Ambassador Xylith, her tentacles writhing with barely contained amusement, added, "Their lifespans are laughably short, their bodies fragile. My people have been perfecting combat techniques for 3,000 years. What could they possibly show us in a few decades?" Below, a group of 20 human soldiers entered the arena. They wore simple combat fatigues, carried no visible weapons, and looked unremarkable compared to the towering, naturally armored aliens observing them. Their instructor, a scarred woman with iron-gray hair, stood before them with her hands clasped behind her. "Back. Begin Hell Week simulation," she announced, calmly. What followed made every alien warrior lean forward. The humans didn't start with weapons drills or tactical formations. Instead, they ran. They ran until their faces turned crimson, until their legs trembled, until several collapsed. Then their instructor made them get up and run more. When running became impossible, they crawled through mud pits beneath electrified nets, dragged themselves over walls, carried fallen comrades on their backs. "They're torturing themselves," whispered Captain Zornell, a 6-eyed insectoid whose people prided themselves on efficiency. "This is wasteful. Why damage their bodies before combat even begins?" But Vexthor said nothing. His trained eye noticed something the others missed. Every human who fell got back up. Every single one. The training intensified. The humans were deprived of sleep, subjected to extreme temperatures, forced to make critical decisions while exhausted and hungry. They carried boat-sized logs as teams, coordinating with nothing but grunts and gasps. When one weakened, others adjusted, redistributed weight, refused to let anyone fail alone. During an underwater drill, one human panicked, thrashing in the pool. His teammates didn't leave him behind or let the instructors extract him. 3 of them surrounded him, calmed him, guided him through the exercise despite their own oxygen deprivation. They all barely passed, but they all passed together. The observation deck had gone completely silent. "They're breaking them," General Thurak said, but his voice lacked its earlier mockery. "No warrior should endure this. It's inefficient. It's necessary," Vexthor interrupted, his eyes fixed on the scene below. "They're not breaking them. They're forging them." Days passed. The alien observers remained transfixed. They watched as humans practiced combat medicine on each other, learning to treat wounds under fire. They observed tactical simulations where humans, despite having fewer natural advantages than any species present, adapted and improvised with frightening creativity. Denied proper weapons, they fashioned them from their environment. Cut off from support, they created their own supply lines. Faced with superior forces, they disappeared like ghosts and struck from unexpected angles, but it was the mental training that truly unsettled the observers. The humans were subjected to psychological warfare, bombarded with their worst fears, shown simulations of failed missions, forced to make impossible choices between bad and worse outcomes. Some broke down, some wept openly, but their instructors and teammates didn't shame them. Instead, they taught them to acknowledge fear, to accept it, and to fight anyway. They weaponized their own suffering, Ambassador Xylith said quietly. Her earlier amusement vanished. They don't just endure pain, they transform it into strength. On the final day, the human trainees faced their graduation exercise, a 60-hour combat simulation against an enemy force 3 times their size, with outdated equipment and no sleep. The aliens watched as these exhausted, battered humans moved through the exercise with mechanical precision. When ambushed, they didn't panic. They had been conditioned to fight through chaos. When injured, they continued. They had learned to function with broken bodies. When overwhelmed, they adapted. They had been trained to find solutions where none seemed to exist. 3 humans didn't make it through. Their bodies simply gave out. But even in failure, they crawled toward the objective until medical teams extracted them. When it ended, the surviving 17 stood in formation, swaying on their feet, bleeding, barely conscious, but standing. Their instructor approached the one who had panicked underwater weeks ago. He now stood tallest among them. "Why do we train like this?" she asked him. His answer carried across the silent arena. "Because war doesn't care if we're tired, scared, or hurt. It doesn't care if we're not ready. So we make ourselves ready for anything. We make ourselves unbreakable." The observation deck remained quiet for a long moment after the humans were dismissed. Finally, General Thurak spoke, his voice carrying none of its previous arrogance. "We are born warriors. We have natural weapons, armor, strength they lack. But they—" He paused, struggling with the realization. "They choose to become warriors. Every day they choose it." Vexthor nodded slowly. "We evolved to be strong. They force themselves to become stronger than evolution intended. We fight because it's our nature. They fight because they decide to, even when everything in their biology tells them to stop." Captain Zornell's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "I've studied their history. They've been doing this to themselves for thousands of years. Every generation pushing harder, training more brutally. Not because they're the strongest, because they know they're not." Ambassador Xylith's tentacles hung limp, a gesture of deep respect among her people. They turn their weakness into philosophy, their fragility into motivation. They don't just accept that they're the underdogs, they build their entire warrior culture around it. As the alien warriors filed out of the observation deck, each walked with a new understanding. Humanity might lack claws, fangs, armor, or venom. They might live brief lives in fragile bodies. But they possess something more dangerous than any natural weapon: the absolute refusal to accept their limitations. In the arena below, the human instructor stood alone, looking up at the now empty observation deck. She smiled slightly, knowing the galaxy's strongest warriors had finally learned an important lesson. Humans didn't train to be strong, they trained to be unstoppable, and that made all the difference.